Hey, welcome to Pretty Well. Do you want to get to the root causes of your health concerns? Do you find yourself Googling, why do I feel this way? And looking for solutions to feel great again? I'm Lisa Smith, and I too felt exhausted, achy, and like I was aging too quickly. I wanted to look and feel like myself again, and spent way too much time and money going to practitioners, even functional medicine practitioners, and not getting results. So I became a functional medicine practitioner myself and learned how to identify and fix root causes to health issues. The good news is there is so much you can do to reclaim your wellness. In this podcast, you'll find quick, simple, and evidence-based guidance that you can easily fit into your day so your energy will be soaring, your mind clear, and your skin will return to its beautiful glow. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome back to the Pretty Well podcast. I'm Lisa Smith, and I am so happy you're here today. A few weeks ago, we talked about your fascia and the importance of nutrition in feeding your fascia. We also talked about the role of inflammation in your fascial health and why it even matters. What all does it impact in your life and in your mobility and your health? Today, we're going to carry on that conversation. We're going to talk more about the lifestyle choices you can make to keep your fascia healthy. And then we're going to do a deeper dive into why that really is important. There is so much amazing research coming out right now about the importance of fascia. We used to think it was just a connective tissue wrapping around all of our muscles and muscle fibers, organs, tissues, but we are learning so much more about fascial health and how the fascia interacts with our nervous system. So hang with me today because you are going to learn things that are going to blow your mind. They're amazing. Our bodies are beautifully and amazingly created, and we're going to talk about that in more depth. A quick recap from a few weeks ago, because this is fascia part 2. We talked about 3 main points necessary to keep your fascia well fed and well hydrated. The first one is hydration, but it's more than just drinking enough water. If you didn't hear that episode, you may want to go back and check it out because there are very easy things you can do that are going to make a really big difference in your wellness, your inflammation levels, even aging, because fascia is involved in all those areas of your life. So the first one was hydration. Beyond your water intake, it's important to make sure you're getting enough minerals in your water and in your diet so that hydration isn't just going through you, but it's actually having an effect on hydrating your tissues, especially your fascia. The second point we talked about was the importance of amino acids in your diet. You get those primarily through protein. We talked about how we think of protein almost as a Lego structure, and all the little individual Legos are the amino acids that make up that protein. Your body breaks down that protein into all the Lego pieces, repackages them into different proteins and into collagen, which makes the scaffolding for your fascia, for your skin, for your soft tissues in general. So we talked about the importance of protein and how to get the right kinds and right amounts of protein. And thirdly, we talked about making sure that your diet is loaded with anti-inflammatory foods because inflammation has a massive effect on your fascia. So right now, I'd like to do a deeper dive into the role of inflammation and how that impacts fascia and why you should even care. Like, is fascia something you should even care about, or is it just kind of one of those out there things that, is new on the horizon in the wellness world? Well, it actually is because it truly impacts how you live day to day and how you feel. So let's talk about, first of all, think of your fascia think of it like saran wrap that you get out of your kitchen drawer. And when you first pull it out, it's so shiny and it's straight and it works perfectly. You pull that nice straight piece out over whatever you're covering to go into the fridge. So it's so smooth and beautiful, and you get it over that bowl and you pop it in the fridge. Now, what happens if you take that plastic wrap and crumple it, you pull the sheet off and crumple it into a ball and you throw it on the counter? Now, when you go to use it and you go to put it over that same bowl, how does it work? It doesn't really work, does it? It doesn't function properly. It doesn't stick properly. It doesn't ever smooth out again. That is so similar to your fascia. When it gets crumpled up like that plastic wrap, it gets stiff and sticky. It doesn't function properly. It doesn't slide and glide the way it's supposed to, which means you are going to feel more achiness. You're going to feel more joint pain. Working out, you're not even getting the gains that you think you should be getting. You're working out, but you're not getting those muscular gains. Everything is supposed to slide like this, and when it's all crumpled up, it just doesn't. Let's talk about what inflammation does and how that impacts this fascia and why this is so important for us to be thinking about. First of all, fascia is like your body's internal Spanx. It's a stretchy, supportive web of connective tissue that holds everything together. It wraps everything, but also holds everything together. When it's hydrated, flexible, and nourished, it moves. Like I said, it slides, but it is like that nice sheet of plastic wrap. But when inflammation becomes involved, especially chronic inflammation, it starts to get a little messy. And here's what happens. First of all, inflammatory chemicals in our body, once inflammation, especially chronic inflammation, sets in, then cytokines, which are inflammatory chemicals, trigger something called fibroblasts. And those are fascia repair cells to lay down extra collagen, because one of the main components of fascia is collagen. So that sounds good, right? We see some problem and the body says, oh, we're going to lay more collagen down. And that sounds like a good thing. But the problem is, as it's doing that on an already crinkled piece of plastic wrap, if you will, then it starts to get thick and stiff. It is not improving the function at all. As a matter of fact, it gets a little janky and you start to feel tight and restricted. Maybe you move a shoulder and it doesn't move the right way, or your hips aren't quite moving the way they should. Knees, ankles, some of those common trouble spots. So that is one thing that inflammation does. Another thing is inflammation further causes dehydration. And in the last episode, we talked about why dehydration is such a problem. If your fascia is hydrated, it's not only smooth and springy, you want it to be springy, but it's moving the way it's supposed to. But when it starts to dehydrate, it gets more like Velcro, sticky, and it doesn't do that anymore. The third thing that inflammation causes is nerve irritation and nerve pain. And we sometimes just think inflammation equals pain, right? That is one of the key factors of inflammation. But here's some of why inflammation leads to pain. When fascia is involved, fascia is loaded with nerve endings. So when inflammation sets in and becomes a real issue, those nerves become hypersensitive. You start to feel not only that Velcro like stickiness, but you also start to get pain in those areas because the nerve endings are all lit up. And the last thing to keep in mind with inflammation is that some scar formation starts to come about, so like sticky scar formation. So it's kind of like knots, kind of like trigger points in a sense. Trigger points more in the muscle, but it's a lot like that where you get these knots that happen and they actually then hold toxins as well. So you kind of get to think of this like bunched up ball of saran wrap. Now it doesn't move as well. It acts like Velcro. It's more dehydrated and stringy, more irritated, and that's why you get less range of motion, more pain and discomfort. We talked last time about the importance of nutrition and hydration. Today, what I'd like to talk about is what else you can do in addition to making sure that you are addressing the nutrition and the hydration. We're going to talk primarily about the lifestyle shifts that you can make. Think about it this way. Food builds the fabric of fascia, but your habits keep it springy. If you work in a sedentary job, or even if you're working at home but you're sitting a lot at the computer, you're on, say, a lot of virtual meetings, if you're sitting a lot, every 30 to 40 minutes, just get up and take a mini break. Get out of your chair and get some movement in, even if it is literally for 1 to 2 minutes. And here's why. Fascia begins to mold itself and model itself based on how you sit throughout the day. So you've seen people who are a little bit older and they can't stand up straight. They try, but it's hard to stand up. That's because fascia has molded that way. And as it molds that way, it's sticky, like Velcro. Then imagine trying to straighten that up. It's very uncomfortable. If you get movement in throughout the day, you are unwinding that. And the fascia becomes more supple and is easier for you to move. So take 1 to 3 minute micro breaks throughout the day. Get up, stretch. You can do some bends, squats, knee lifts. Research shows that when people do that, they end up reducing not only pain, but they improve their flexibility. Really simple things in addition: neck glides, ears to shoulders, shoulder controlled articular rotations. They're also called CARS, C-A-R-S. You can do some hip figure eights. You can do calf pumps where you stand and up and down on your toes, or a real quick wall sit. Anything that gets your blood moving and your body moving. It's also helpful to be doing some deep breathing as well. Take 5 to 10 slow breaths and you will start to see that improve your circulation and your mobility as well. Some other things you can do, not necessarily throughout the day, but at the end of the day, you can do some myofascial TLC. You can get on a foam roller and roll out your quads, use a foam roller on your back, arms, neck. That will help keep that fascia loose. I have 2 previous podcast episodes where I had fascia experts on. I'll link those in the show notes so that you have those to refer back to that really take us deeper into how you can use foam rolling to keep that fascia moving, hydrated, supple, and feeling much more mobile. Some other things to keep in mind are the importance of sleep for your fascia. Sleep is your prime detoxification time, and it's also the prime time when your body decides to repair. When you get into deep sleep, that's slow brain waves, that is the main time for your body to have tissue repair and hormone repair and detoxification. So you want to make sure you're getting a good night's sleep, in addition to getting those micro breaks throughout the day and possibly doing some foam rolling. Some great ways to make sure you're getting a good night's sleep are making sure your room is dark and that it's cool and that you stop caffeine, preferably 8 to 10 hours before you would ever get some shut-eye. Then also monitoring how much alcohol you have in the evenings. That's also important because 2 things. A lot of times we think, oh, I can drink caffeine before bed. I have no problem doing that. And then I just sleep fine. And you do go to sleep fine, but you sleep lighter. Caffeine has a 4 to 6 hour half-life. And what that means is that it takes 4 to 6 hours for half of the caffeine to be eliminated from your system. That's only half. So simple math, in 8 to 12 hours, it's pretty much out of your system. So even though you can drink a cup of coffee and go to sleep, I used to be able to do that, and I've had so many people say to me, caffeine doesn't bother me. I can drink it right before bed and head to sleep. You can, but you're still going to sleep later because that caffeine is still in your system and it's still a stimulant. Whether or not you feel it, it will be affecting the quality of your sleep. The second thing is alcohol. With alcohol, we fall asleep faster. It's a sedative, so it definitely speeds up our falling asleep. But what it does is it disrupts that sleep after the initial wave of falling to sleep. So again, we don't get into as deep of a sleep because it throws that off. So we don't sleep as well. And we tend to, and Check me if this hasn't happened to you. If you go out for a glass or two of wine with dinner, you fall asleep and then you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and it takes forever to fall back asleep because it disrupts your sleep pattern. Now, this next point is so interesting, and that is the role of stress on our fascial health. The biochemistry of stress directly impacts your fascia. Over time, if you have elevated cortisol, your main stress hormone, that begins to impair collagen synthesis, your ability to make collagen. And it starts to mess with or alter the signaling between your connective tissues. Now, this is the really interesting part. How does emotional trauma and deep stress impact our fascia? We used to think fascia was just this wrapping around all of our tissues, but it's not just this physical tissue wrapping. It's also your body's emotional recording system. It holds on to your experiences, especially your stressful and traumatic experiences. It literally stores, it records those situations into the tissue and hangs on to them. This is why it becomes really important to learn different ways of releasing that stress, releasing that trauma. Of course, deep breathing is important, but one I really love is emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping. I have a great episode with Sherry Lukey on that as well. I'm going to put that in the show notes because that is a super easy 10 minutes a day, simple thing to do that starts to help your body understand that it can release those stored emotions, and that begins to release inflammation and some of that tightness your body holds on to. When you experience a really stressful situation, your body releases cortisol, your main stress hormone. It also releases adrenaline as you go into fight or flight. That chemistry makes your fascia brace for impact. So as you're heading into fight or flight, your body is saying, I either need to stand here and fight this threat or I got to get out of here. There's also freeze and fawn. It used to always just be called fight or flight. Now it's usually referred to the stress response as fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. But in all of those cases, your body is gearing up for impact of one sort or another. And so it flinches. If that just happens once in a blue moon, your body recovers pretty quickly. But if you are exposed to chronic stress, and let's be honest, who isn't? Your body goes into this chronic flinch and the tissue doesn't respond. It doesn't rebound. It stays tight and rigid. That's why if you ever have been carrying a lot of stress, you feel like your body's wrapped in armor. You're just like rigid and tight, and sometimes you find your shoulders are way up here and you got to say, breathe, release. That's because your body is gearing up for that. That stored tension and those guarding patterns over time become habitual. Your fascia then adapts to how you hold yourself and move. If you've ever noticed that most of us carry tension in our neck and shoulders, if you've noticed that you do under stressful conditions yank your shoulders up, then what happens is as your fascia is guarding, your shoulders are hiked up, your jaw is tense, your breath starts to shorten. This fascia, just like when I said the person sits and it remodels to keep everything in this bracing mode. Even after the stressor is gone, your body is still walking through life like this. I have been through that where people are like, hey, what's up with your shoulders? I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I didn't even notice that. So start to pay attention to how you're holding your body, because that is also directly related to your fascia modeling. Another thing that this emotional stress does to your fascia is that it begins to reduce blood flow and oxygenation. When everything's loose and working as it should, your blood flow through your blood vessels works great. But as things get rigid and tight, it's just not flowing as well. High blood pressure comes from when those arteries start to get congested. It's tightening the blood vessels and the blood doesn't flow as easily. And if you're chronically tight, you may or may not have high blood pressure. Very often we do under stress because everything's tight. But that tightness and that reduced circulation keeps us from getting enough oxygen to our tissues, because what carries oxygen? It's our red blood cells through the blood. If that starts to get constricted, we're not oxygenating our tissues as well, which further makes your fascia more sticky, more painful, more tight, more like Velcro. And that's why sometimes if you have ever been in a really stressful season and you're like, I'm trying to stretch things out, but they just won't seem to stretch out, these are the reasons why everything feels like it's staying stuck, because emotions literally are getting stuck in the tissue. Now, fascia is loaded with nerve endings. It's a very sensory rich tissue, and it's in constant dialogue with your nervous system. So deep stress and trauma and overwhelming experiences, those get imprinted on these physical holding patterns. But there's this cross communication between your nervous system and your fascia. They're talking all the time. It's a two-way street. They're always talking to each other. If you've ever been in a massage, had roping, or been in a yin yoga where you hold a pose for a really long time, if you've ever started crying or had a friend or someone you know who's been in one of those bodywork types of situations, and they say, I just started crying and I didn't know why, that's why. The fascia and the soft tissue holds on to those emotions, literally holds on to them. So when you begin to stretch them out or get them massaged out or worked out, the emotions have been released and you can heal them and yourself that way. That's why body work is so incredibly powerful. When you're doing healing body work, can help you get a lot farther faster. So think of your fascia like an emotional sponge. It soaks up all these experiences, especially the stressful and the difficult ones. If you never wring it out through body work or breath work or movement, exercise, activity, therapy, any kind of nourishing practice that allows you to feel and release, it just stays in this emotional sponge and it gets heavier and stickier and soggier and weighed down. But as you start to release it, you don't just move more freely, you don't just move with less pain, but emotionally, you begin to release and feel lighter. And there's one more thing to add to this emotional piece, and that is that adaptogens can be helpful. In addition to some of the body work I mentioned, the breath work, some of those tools in your toolbox, adaptogens can be incredibly helpful in helping your body to release and deal with some of these stressful situations that hang out in your body. Even if you think, oh yeah, that was really stressful, but I already dealt with it. It's behind me now. I'm good. I've made peace with it. Make sure your body's made peace with it. Maybe your intellect has. Maybe your emotions on the surface have, but a lot of times our body still holds on to it. So adaptogens that can be helpful, ashwagandha. Keep in mind, not everyone does well on ashwagandha. It can influence testosterone levels. For me, I personally find it to be helpful, but it may or may not be the right adaptogen for you. But there's so many others to choose from. There's rhodiola, there's schisandra, there's holy basil, there's ginseng. And then there are those functional mushrooms like reishi, cordyceps, and other mushrooms. You can take these in capsule form, tea and coffee forms, a lot of them even matcha and chai. There's so many options for taking different adaptogens, and they can be very potent and helpful as you're addressing this aspect of your wellness. In addition to dealing with inflammation, stress, nutrition, and micro movement, a couple other things can be really helpful. Red light therapy. If you've ever used red light therapy, you can get a panel at home. You can go to a red light bed. There's so many options today for red light therapy. The fancy term for that is photobiomodulation. All that means is that it can be really helpful using the photo, the light starts to modulate your biology, meaning it starts to help your biology shift and change in a way that helps it to heal. It's an amazing way to make progress in soft tissue health, fascial health, emotional health, detoxification. Like, even there's so many really good businesses now that are sauna businesses. I had Seek Sauna on. That was a great episode. Look in your locale and see where you can pay for a red light sauna session. They are so relaxing. They feel amazing. You just go in for any amount of time, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Sometimes you have to work up to those amounts. Sometimes it's great just to start with 5 to 10 minutes, but that can be really helpful as well. As we wrap up, let's just put this all in a package, a really simple way that you can improve your fascia health, which improves everything. It helps reduce inflammation. It helps you to move better. It reduces joint pain and achiness. It helps you to feel less fatigued, more energized. So first of all, hydration with minerals. We talked about that. Hydrate and mineralize. And I specifically tell you what types of minerals to get that hydrate your fascia. And then fascia foods. So you want to look for making sure you're getting the right amount of protein each day. That is 25 to 35 grams of protein per meal, and some protein with snacks as well if you do snack. That will give you the right amount of amino acids to be able to rebuild collagen, which rebuilds your fascia. Hydration, mineralization, protein foods, and anti-inflammatory foods. Vegetables are your primary anti-inflammatory foods, as well as omega-3 fatty acids. Those are some of the key foods to help bring that inflammation down. And then movement is where we started today. Movement, micro breaks when you're sitting for long periods of time, foam rolling, body work, whether it's massage or rolfing or yoga or Pilates, restorative exercise. Those are all ways that you can begin to get more mobility in your fascia and get the nutrients moving through it so that you start to feel the effects of making those improvements. This is really helpful to know. Your fascia likes little and often. So consistency beats intensity every time. You don't have to beat yourself up with a foam roller until you're like, oh, I hate this. It hurts so much. Little bits often is what helps your fascia to stay fluid and not to get molded in those stuck positions. Keep in mind, your fascia is a living fabric. So it's this amazing fabric in your body that's living, and it talks to your nervous system, and they influence each other. So take care of it like you take care of anything you love. Feed it, water it, move it, and make sure it gets a really good night's sleep. Your fascia health will pay you off exponentially. It'll help by increasing your flexibility, your fluidity, your movement, your agility. It'll decrease pain and stiffness. It'll slow aging, and it'll calm your inflammation. So these are great tools in your toolbox for helping all those areas of your life. Now, before we completely say goodbye today, I want to remind you that lisasmithwellness.com has some great free information. So please go visit me at my website. Again, lisasmithwellness.com. It's linked in the show notes. And I have something really exciting coming in a couple months that I can't wait to tell you more about. I hate the tease thing, but it's true. So stay posted. I cannot wait to tell you about this. This is something that I've been working on for a long time, and I think you're going to love. I'll bring you more information in the coming weeks. Stay tuned, and thank you for joining me today. I can't wait to talk with you next week. Until then, stay pretty well. Bye.